Hello and welcome back again to the Wild Wisdom Wellbeing guest slot with me, Robin Harris of Equenergy Wellbeing Naturally. And today I'm super excited. I have another wonderful guest with me. Today I've got Aine Gallagher of Vita Health come to join me here on the guest slot. So Aine, welcome. And I know that you're going to be talking to us today about the natural set point weight, which I'd never heard about before I met you. But if you would start maybe by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you've come to be so passionate about this concept.
Of course, yeah. So hi, Robin. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. Yes, so I'm so passionate about this topic because it's something that I've found myself and continue to work on and obviously find too. But it all began really when I was kind of my teenage years, kind of mid to late 20s. Went on for a little while. I was kind of dieting a lot and trying different exercise programs, different diets, just all in a bid to get my weight to a weight that my body didn't want it to be, basically. And I kept trying. I was trying a lot, doing lots and lots of things. And I knew there was a different way, but I just kept trying. I thought, surely I can be slimmer. But this went on for a little while until I reached out and found Sarah Grant, who's a nutritional therapist who I work really close with now with our clients. And she taught me about the set point theory and the hypothesis that our bodies have a set point weight that it's always striving to achieve. And as soon as I learned that, it was like, oh, yes, I knew it. And so the pressure all went off and I realized, yeah, I can really live at that set point weight, and dieting is just not the answer. So that's where my passions come from, really, to really help women find their natural weight and love their natural weight too.
Yeah, and I think it's lovely that your body knew. Our bodies really do know, don't they? And brilliant that you felt that kind of, there is a natural way to do this, but unfortunately there is a lot of pressure, isn't there, in the media and so on, that we should look a certain way, we should be a certain set of measurements. It's not even just about weight, is it? It's about having that hourglass figure or whatever if you're a woman, and that's the goal, the ideal. But it changes so much, doesn't it? If you look back over history and you look at the different portrayals of a feminine figure in art, you will see, or in different cultures, look at the arts of different cultures to see what is their concept of ideal, and they're so varied.
So varied. It's so varied. And I think that's a really good point, actually, because your body has the set point range. And then obviously, but everything on the outside is saying have, the thigh gap or be really tall and slim or, hourglass. But then our set point weight is just like, well, like it's happy there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really care about anything else. So it's really interesting you say that, because it's so relevant. Yeah.
But it's just, when I kind of heard that, it made me think that, well, there is no ideal, is there, apart from what your body wants itself? But the rest is just a concept. It's a construct by the society in which we live. And if you move to a different society, maybe that's it. They say that it's just I'm too short for my weight or something, because if you stretched me, I'd be fine. Or maybe I'm just in the wrong culture. I should be living in another country. The country that fits where my body fits, and then there won't be the pressure on me to change.
Definitely. And one of the best things I really, I suppose, enjoyed learning about and putting into practice was pre-learning it, really. I was working against my body. That's what I really learned. I was dieting, and it was just not working with my body. But when I really learned about the set point theory and how I can apply it, I was like, it just felt so good. Like everything I was doing was like, I'm working with my body now. It's all seems to be in harmony. So when I was kind of dieting a good while ago now, it was more like, my energy levels were low, my hormones weren't quite right. And it's these little cues and things that are telling you, your body's telling you all the time that it's not right. But again, it's that what you're surrounded by, you think, oh, I must be doing it. Surely this is right. There's got to be another diet that will sort it out. But there wasn't. So really interesting.
And unfortunately, right from when we're children, we think that other people know better. As a child, you can understand that. you're small, you don't have an awful lot of power and influence in your life. Adults obviously have been here a lot longer, so you kind of defer to what they tell you.
Yes.
But then we lose that ability or sensitivity to what our own body is saying, that sensitivity to listening and to trusting that the body, our own body, knows what's right for me as an individual. And if I follow that, I'm going to be so much more comfortable, so much happier in myself, so much more at home in my own skin.
Yes.
Rather than worrying about what is society telling me, what is the social media description of who I should be, or trying to copy somebody else because they're seen in the media and celebrated, rather than just celebrating me for who I am.
Absolutely. And I think it comes around to that acceptance as well. When I started to learn, I mean, as personally, I don't really step on the scales much actually at all, because I'm very aware of how I kind of feel. And the way I did find my, I suppose, natural weight on the scales was I made the changes and my body adapted and I felt much better. And then I obviously maybe stepped on the scales and I was like, okay, that's where the weight is. Then that must be where it is. It wasn't really kind of the other way around. But it's interesting that you're saying that, because something that I remind myself of as well is, like, when we're all born, we have that intuition straight away, and there's no, we learn, don't we, as we go along, what we're surrounded by, and then we obviously get dragged here, there, and everywhere. So I always think, gosh, yeah, when I was born, I didn't have anything like this. So it's just kind of reconnecting with your intuition that your body always has. It's always there. So yeah.
Definitely. And I liked as well what you were saying just now about when you were dieting and doing all of these things, whether that's, we tend sometimes to over exercise. I was somebody who in my teens, I lost a lot of weight, but I was doing a lot of exercise and I probably wasn't eating very well. And one of my school teachers actually said something, and this is back in the 80s, mid 80s. She said, your body knows what it needs. So even back then, I hadn't heard of set point, or she was the only person who ever said it to me, and I kind of dismissed it because I was that age. But that your body knows what weight it needs to be and the weight at which it's comfortable and happy.
Yeah.
And you were saying about not having energy and just feeling, then you left feeling lethargic, and you maybe reach for the sugary foods and the caffeine drinks, and you go into those peaks and troughs of the blood sugar.
Absolutely.
And that is the body just saying, this isn't working for me, versus the energy. And, you just look at you and you glow when you talk about this stuff. That energy versus how you were when you were trying to force your body into something it didn't want to be.
Yeah, it's so true. And to be honest, Robin, as well, I can always pinpoint now, it's like you can kind of see the big circle. I feel like I've done, like, I knew kind of before, when I was, like, I suppose when you can remember, like 5 to 10 years old, and I was just, living life, just my mum was great. We just had really real food. Just, there was no, massive, I don't know, we didn't talk much about dieting, was never mentioned really, but we just ate and we exercised, went out for fun, but it wasn't really structured. And it was just, I was just living the way I felt was right. But then I remember then I just started kind of, veering towards, oh, okay, what's a diet? What's this about? And then it's just been a whole cycle. But then I feel like I'm back to, okay, yeah, it's quite interesting. It's what you're exposed to, isn't it? And that's, it's what's out there, what can really take you off track. But then again, your body always, it's always there. So,
and sometimes that's an essential part of the journey. It's a learning, and because you've been on that journey, you then can share all of this stuff to support other people to learn about their natural set point. And I love as well, in the blurb that I was reading before we joined up, that you say about helping women to find and fall in love with. So that that thing of acceptance, but acceptance through love, not acceptance through, oh, this is just what I'm stuck with.
Exactly.
But
yes,
learning to, obviously we're going to enjoy the greater energy and the feel, because the body feels so much better, but just to be able to also love how I am, who I am.
Oh, definitely. Yes, because I think then there is that thing of when there's so many diets around, I think we've all been there. We might try a diet and then it doesn't kind of work for us, but then maybe a friend or someone might do it and it works really well for them. And there's this kind of toing and froing, like, why isn't it working for me? But there's just that uniqueness about us, isn't there? And I think it is really finding what works for you. And that's when you kind of find it, it really, really works, and it feels great. And I think because obviously of my past of like going through that journey, you're so right. I mean, when many clients do come to me with that, oh, I've just tried. The client comes to me saying they've tried lots and lots of different diets. I always think, oh, okay, I think I might be the right person for this kind, because it is. I feel like I've done the same. So there's just a lot of tools there that can help, guide people really into that and reconnecting. So yeah.
And it's such an industry, really, isn't it? The diet industry, and all of these ways that we're kind of hooked in. So they're all the diet drinks, and that kind of gets me as well. Many of the diet drinks, in terms of diet sodas and the low calories and the low fats, they're actually probably setting you up to put on weight.
Yes.
And they're not healthy, because if they don't have fats in, they're full of sugars, they're full of processed ingredients. Yeah. So when we can find, like you were saying, your mum gave you real food, not this just microwave ready meal kind of food, but proper nutritious food. Because also there's the concept that we're overfed, but we are malnourished in the Western world. So the body is still looking for the nutrients, and maybe that's why we're hungry, apart from the fact that we've lost the ability sometimes to know when we're full versus when we're hungry. Yeah. But if the body isn't getting all the nutrients it needs, it's still going to have cravings, even when we've eaten enough in terms of volume.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned Mum earlier, like she grew up in Ireland and she just had, pure food all the time, like really fresh, real food. And then she moved over when she was 18 or 19. Never seen a tin of beans, or never seen like a butter spread. So it was and that's why we say about dieting kind of culture and the low fats. It was just, but she was so healthy growing up, and our immune system was just brilliant. But it's a real change for her to see all this like low fat and then things for cholesterol, and it was just never there. But then they were healthy, and there wasn't a gym in sight. There was nothing like that. So it's really interesting you say about the culture and then adapting to it and what's around you. But yeah, and now obviously when I'm so passionate about this and I'm always talking to her about nutrition, she often says, oh gosh, it's like I'm back when I was young again, back in Ireland. It's just real food, isn't it? Just got to eat food as close to its natural state as possible. And so it's really, again, it's like that big circle, isn't it? And just being aware that is out there. And I think awareness is key, isn't it? To not be hooked into it all, really.
And just while you were talking about that, it made me think of my mum and her circle that I've watched her go on, where she would have been having skimmed milk and low-fat spreads, and then herself on her journey, she's learnt a lot of complementary therapies. She does aromatherapy and massage and reflexology, and through that whole journey, she then was reading a lot about how do we support our well-being, and stopped using all of these lower fat kind of options, and now just butter is not as processed. It's not full of all those chemical or the different kinds of fats and how saturated they are or not, and how they work and don't work with the body, but just eating the proper natural real food. Then and when I was studying nutrition a little bit a while ago, they were talking about how the liver looks at each molecule of what we eat and says, is this something I recognize as food or not? If I don't recognize it as food, if it's chemical or it's processed, it puts it into the liver, surrounds it by a ball of fat so that it won't harm the body. And then we get liver issues, we get fatty liver. So it's not just the fat that is evident on the outside or your, what you can pinch in various different places, but it's the fat around the organs or in the organs that is. So you can get people who look skinny, but actually they're not healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important you say that, Robin, because I think, when we have got maybe carrying a little bit of excess fat and, we can feel really down on ourselves and angry at our body, But again, moving back to our body trying to keep us safe and in balance, that's what it's doing. It's amazing. It's keeping us well. That's why we're overweight. It's keeping our body safe. And I think that's another, again, it's a shift in the approach to what our body's doing. So it's just, I suppose it's making sure, helping people not to be angry at their body if they're overweight. It's just doing what it needs to be done to keep us safe, really. So that's such an important point, definitely. Yeah,
that's so much a part of what I do. We look at beliefs and how our beliefs play out in our body. So a very timely example is coronavirus and the pandemic, where we're distancing and self-isolating and all of these things, which leaves us feeling isolated. And when we feel isolated and alone, our primitive brain goes into that survival mode where, well, if I'm alone, because it's still working on the old caveman tribe kind of way of looking at the world, if I'm alone, I have less chance of finding water and less chance of finding food, less chance of finding shelter, of which I need all three to survive. So what do? I will hold water, I will store more fat, because those two things help me feel warmer and help me have more water and more reserves to keep me going longer, so that there's more chance I'll either find my tribe again or I will find what I need to take in.
Yes.
So when we don't have these things, and when we deprive ourselves, you talk about supporting the body versus depriving the body.
Yeah.
We're just perpetuating that cycle. And I'm very big on compassion for ourselves and forgiveness for ourselves. Yes. So looking at that, maybe I'm feeling a little bit bigger today. But what is it really? Is your body holding because it's feeling scared, it's feeling threatened in some way?
Yeah. And that it's okay for it to do that, kind of like, again, allowing it to do that, definitely. It's interesting to talk about beliefs as well there, because I think a big part of my kind of process of that journey I was on is almost, when you're in it, I think you don't realize that actually it's sometimes observing your thoughts. I mean, it took me a while to even notice a thought, or notice that I wasn't that thought, or that how it's running, like the patterns. And I remember I did a course actually when I was on my journey, and it was a lady who had, she talked about diet mentality and changing your diet mentality, obviously, to more supportive thoughts. And a brilliant table of like diet mentality thoughts and like non-diet mentality thoughts. And it was just eye-opening. I thought, oh, right. So you kind of read the diet mentality thought and you think, oh, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But I could actually think that. And then it's almost like as soon as you read that thought and think it, that I could actually think that, it just, and this is all part of kind of changing the whole approach, really. It's almost like rewiring your thoughts a little bit. So it's really interesting to talk about the thoughts and belief, because they can be so powerful, can't they? They can really, absolutely kind of direct so many of your actions ongoing.
Completely, yeah. And that's our inner voice. And that is pretty much running most of the time. And we are listening. Even if we don't kind of think we are, and if we're saying things half in jest, but there's still, when somebody says something and there's a little dig underneath it. Yeah. So if we're talking to ourselves like that, our body's listening.
Yes.
So why don't we speak to ourselves the way we speak to our friends? The things we say to ourselves, we wouldn't say to our worst enemies.
So true. Yeah.
And if you think that our body is largely water, and Dr. Masaru Emoto did experiments with water, saying that if you send love to water, if you speak caringly and lovingly to water, it will freeze in beautiful crystalline structure. But if you send hate to that water and shout at it and abuse it verbally, it will fracture and make these splintered kind of crystals when it freezes. And if our body is made up of such a, that's the highest percentage of what we are, we should then be bearing that in mind and thinking, well, if I talk to myself with love, my body will show that. My body will hold that. It has a memory.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is that sense of you in the body not knowing the difference between a stressful or negative thought, or whether it's actually in front of you, physically threatening you. So it's taking it all on, isn't it, without knowing that difference. So yeah, it's definitely being mindful of it. And I think understanding as well that those thoughts, I mean, even now, I often get a thought that creeps in that maybe talks about dieting, or maybe shouldn't do. But now I think when when it's that, it's like kind of sitting back, isn't it, and just making sure you can observe the thoughts and accepting that they're not going away. It's never they're not going to stop. It's just whether you give them power and attach to them and take the action when they're there. And it's a constant journey, isn't it? But worthy journey, I think, to really try and do that. Yeah.
And it's knowing that inner voice sometimes isn't our own. It's something that we have internalized. And because it's out there in social media, it is going to crop up, isn't it? It's not something that we can get away with. Even if our minds stopped throwing these random things at us, it would still be there in our environment. But like you said, it's the ones that we choose to engage with.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Another book I read, actually, I don't know if you've heard about it, Robin. It's Catherine Hanson, Brain Over Binge. You've heard about that book?
No.
Well, this is another. It's on the thought and action topic. Really, she was similar thing, but she was kind of binge eating, and she obviously learned to detach from the thoughts and the urges. And I think that it was a really powerful teaching. Actually, I think she did 2 books on it, but it is that I think. She was trying lots of diets again, thinking there's got to be an answer and trying different things. But then all she needed to do was actually to stop her binges. She just had to, just ignore the urge. And actually, I suppose she was saying about there's always that second where you don't need to take action. Like you'll get a thought, and there's just that little minute, or not even a minute, like a second that you don't have to actually. That thought can't make you take action. And but obviously the more you practice that, then the urge does kind of whittle away. But that's another. It's just these little things that it's like a collective. It's a collective thing, I suppose, really. But that was definitely a powerful one for me too. Yeah.
And it is those also. What are the things that work for me? What are the things that speak to me, that resonate for me? So it might be that book, and obviously anything that can support you in being able to put aside, not feed, not engage with the thoughts that aren't supporting, aren't serving. Yeah. And the things then that can actually, instead of, this is the mindset for a dieter, this is the mindset of somebody who just is happy with who they are. And when it's like you were saying about reading the different thoughts, and you read the one, maybe the diet mindset, and you think, oh gosh, that's how I've been living. And you read the other one and you think, oh gosh, why am I not living that way? Because in a sense, it's kind of like, well, it's like, why have I not had these thoughts? They are so common sense. This is how obviously it would serve me better to think. Why have I not had them? Yeah. Which in itself is that kind of light bulb moment and helps to make the shift.
It definitely does. And there's such a freedom, I think, as well. And I have had clients say this to me as well, but not waking up thinking, oh gosh, what can I not eat today? Or what can I eat? Or there's just a freedom, that when that mentality and all those thoughts quieten down and you don't have that attachment to them, it's almost like you can get on with your day, and there's I don't have to think about that now. And that's really, and then understanding that there will be another diet that comes maybe into your, you might read it in a magazine or be on the TV. They will always be there, won't they? But then you just, when you get past that, I remember, like I used to engage with that, or, but you just get, I think that is that freedom, and it's really nice. Kind of that ease in your body, isn't it? It's like a weight lift off your shoulders. That's what I feel and learn from clients too. Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's great if we can have a sense of humor around it, because for a start, we learn so much better when we see something as play. So even if we, and if it comes in with compassion for me as well. So I might look back and think, oh, I used to do that, but laughing with myself, not at myself. And if it comes up again, oh, there it is again. Right, that's an opportunity to think a different way, to just be a little bit more self-aware. Also, is there something that triggers me particularly? Am I feeling stressed today? Therefore, this hits me harder. Yeah, I'm more vulnerable to dieting things when I'm feeling stressed, or actually I'm hungry, I need my lunch. Yeah, and then I feel bad about eating, or whatever it might be. To notice our trigger points.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think what always used to make me, and I suppose still does really, if clients might say, oh, but I've got a wedding at the weekend, and oh, that's really annoying because then I'm trying to, and in me, I'm like, oh gosh, but like those occasions, like you should be looking forward to them. Like there's such lovely occasions to be with friends and family to enjoy. And it would just really, oh gosh, inside I always think it's such a shame that, you know, when people, and don't, you know, I've been there before, I think, oh, what will I eat there then when I go there? But I just think it's, again, when that goes, you're just free to enjoy the event and obviously eat what feels right without thinking I can and can't. And I think that's a real, I think a real great thing to, I suppose, get to, and maybe have a target to, you know, just enjoying life, because those occasions will always be part of your life as well. And I think it doesn't have to be, sucked into that mentality really around them. So really
I love that idea that it gives us freedom, it's liberating, and it's so true, because if you think about food, you know, if you have an issue with alcohol or drugs or gambling, you can put those out of your life if they're a struggle for you. But with food, you can't. And we eat regular meal times mostly, or, you know, there's kind of that culture around you have your breakfast, you have your lunch, you have your tea, whatever words you use for those. You might have a supper, afternoon tea, morning snack. But it then becomes so regimented, and then we're thinking, as soon as we finished one, what can I have for the next one, or not have for the next one, and how many calories have I eaten so far today that then I have whatever left for the rest of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, no, definitely. I think there is that ease around it. There can be like an ease found around eating, and knowing that you will eat again. Like that's always, and sometimes, you know, there is that kind of when there is that dieting mentality, is that kind of like panic, or I need to live in a world where we do, the next meal will be there, you know, and we're very lucky to remind ourselves that, you know, that each meal there's always going to be more. So it's really interesting. But I would one thing I wanted to mention too, we haven't, I suppose, touched on exercise, but I suppose sharing my journey as well, if anyone does relate to it, is that, you know, obviously with our the dieting mentality, they always talk about exercise in terms of burning calories and moving as much as you can to burn calories. And funnily, what was happening to me is I was doing too much of that, and that's what was keeping me away from my natural weight. So it was quite an interesting change in my thought pattern and mentality to think, okay, I actually need to exercise less and be more restorative. And that's always quite an interesting one, because straight away people think, oh, I need to move more. Even some people maybe that are carrying extra weight, sometimes not always moving more. It could be just looking at what you need to do to create balance in your body from like a holistic approach, really. So it's just just again an interesting approach, and that's with the dieting culture and what's encouraged.
And that people aren't aware that when we over-exercise, it adds to our physical stress.
Oh yeah.
And cortisol, and those are the chemicals, when they're, you know, hormones running around in our body, that can actually cause us to hold weight.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not only about what we eat, it's about everything in life, really, and how we are addressing our stress, how we're moving, how often we're moving, in what ways. So exercise doesn't have to be aerobics or jogging or any of these things. It can be yoga, and it doesn't have to be the more energetic kinds of yoga, but it can just be the stretching side of yoga, or yin yoga. So even things that aren't necessarily movement as such, you need a balance. I love that concept of balance. So have some that is movement, have some that might be quite energetic, have other times that are quiet and still. They're, like you say, the restorative stuff, they're equally important.
Oh, absolutely. Again, just to kind of create that balance in the body. And I think when I was kind of coming out of that exercising mentality as well, of, you know, doing as much as I can, there was like, it would creep in like, oh yeah, I'll do yoga, but do it the vinyasa one, you know, the one where you really so it took a while. Like there is that, no, actually you can just stop and do some restorative, but it takes, you know, it does take time, and it's just, I suppose, being patient and kind to yourself too, like, because it's okay to have gone through that journey of dieting, because as I say, you know, it's exposed so much, and it's okay to have done that, but it's just rewiring, re-educating, isn't it?
And I think sometimes it's a bit like being on a roundabout. If we jump off too fast, We might go spinning off somewhere. We might feel very giddy. So sometimes it is a part of the journey, isn't it? Just to step it down bit by bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree. Yeah.
And sometimes when we're finding a balance, we can be like the pendulum where we're swinging either way. And it's all just a part of the journey. Just keeping on listening and trusting that our bodies know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So our bodies don't mind. It doesn't mind if it's a Monday. It doesn't mind if it's a Friday. It doesn't matter if it's, because, there's that kind of like start the diet on the Monday. Yeah, our bodies don't mind really. Like they take it all.
And you mentioned earlier as well about when you were dieting, it throws your hormones off if your body isn't at the balance that it needs.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
Obviously, as women particularly, it can really hit us hard.
Well, you're so right. And that was definitely a key factor for me to really know that something wasn't right, because you maybe can kind of go with the energy levels. You can be like, I can get by. If it's not too low, you're like, yeah, just keep going. But the hormonal level thing, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's definitely a little flag there that there's something not quite right. And it's funny, some people do ask me, so how long do you expect, if you work with people, how long do you expect them to find their natural weight, and how long did it take me to? And if I'm totally honest, it didn't take me long to find my natural weight, because I was doing quite a few things that were off balance, really. Once I learned this and put the things into place, and I knew on the hormonal level, once all that rebalanced, it took about a month and a half to really make me think, okay, yeah, this is clear now. I know what it is. But when you haven't got, I suppose, clear flags, then it can just take a while, really. And it does take that just understanding and being patient with your body, really, and experimenting too, just knowing that it is going to be a bit of a journey, like you're saying, you kind of step up. But it can be very personal how long it can take. But for me, I think I just got so far, I suppose, that I really, really knew that there's something, not quite right. And then as soon as I learned it, I was just so determined to get there that it didn't take too long. But it is a very personal journey, but it does, when you've got those specific things that aren't quite right, they're definitely key things to focus on, really, and know that things are right when they're balanced. Really. Yeah, but absolutely, it's so key to focus on that and support the body and the hormones balance, definitely.
And although sometimes it is hard to say how long it's going to take for somebody to find their own balance, find their own set point weight, and maybe achieve that weight and start to feel at their fullest. I think every single step along the way, if we approach it with openness, curiosity, a sense of adventure, and that this is me learning more about me, and that investment in self-care, in getting to know ourselves, and because we learn so much as well, don't we? It's not just about the weight, it's about who I am and what lights me up, and it can have so many implications, consequences, change lots of areas of our lives.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And understanding too that this natural weight, our set point, can fluctuate. And it is, as we get older, like it can increase slightly. And that's fine too. It's just nature, isn't it? And a very natural process. But in the kind of coming out of that dieting mentality too, is that knowing that when you go on holiday, or if you're having your Christmas holidays and things, the weight will fluctuate, and you can just kind of go with the wave and the flow. And it just feels so much better, really. And it's okay for the body to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
And seasonally too, do you see a change in the seasons as we come into the colder weather? I know that I tend to be somebody who needs a bit more fuel and feels like hibernating quite often when the days get short.
100%. Yeah. And I always find kind of like salads are much more appealing in the summer, like hearty food, much more in the winter. Yeah, absolutely. And there isn't, again, it can be really, you kind of like guided by your body, I think, sometimes, in that it feels nicer, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you mentioned Christmas and holidays. I think they're set periods in the year, aren't they? They're not very long generally. Certainly, holidays are normally about 2 weeks, and Christmas is around the same if you stretch it for the whole of the holiday. 2 weeks out of 52.
Yeah.
If you're having a little bit more food, if it's winter as well, you maybe need more food. Just again, probably, do you look at things like listening to your body and knowing when you're full?
Yeah, definitely. One thing I talk quite a lot about is the hunger scale, and it's just a really powerful tool. Again, one I use. So I always have to share things that I used. I suppose I'm going to talk a bit more relating to them more really, but it is that kind of like one being you're absolutely ravenous and can barely function and concentrate. Traits, not in a good place. So we want to try and kind of bring this in to be between 5 and a 7. So you're just feeling maybe a little bit of rumble in your tummy, and you start to eat, and you get to a 7 where you just feel satisfied. And this is something actually, it's funny to talk about Christmas when I talk about occasions. And it's another thing often people say, oh no, Christmas is coming up, and now there's going to be all this food around, and it's that, that kind of clutching my foot in my stomach. I think, oh, but that's great, isn't it? So lovely to have all that food around and celebrate Christmas. But I think people can approach it in a real, it's going to be a really hard time over Christmas. But the hunger scale is a really key one here, because we all get into the situations where we can't control what we eat, and there isn't always fresh food or vegetables and things. And that's life, isn't it? So I think the hunger scale can really come in handy in places like that. Just don't worry about what you have, what's available. Just check in with your hunger scale. I think, right, am I hungry? Do I need it? Okay, no, I don't. Okay, maybe I'll have a little bit. Keep checking in. If we can keep in this little window, then we're in a really good place and not really overindulge every day or get really hungry. Because again, if you're allowing yourself to get really hungry, we're going to have the blood sugar effect. Yeah, the roller coaster going up, and that's where we don't want to be as well. So, like you were saying before about we want to try and settle in the middle, whatever's in front of us, whatever's there. So yeah, no, really, really important time. Yeah.
And when we start to understand our body, listen to it and honor it, we can then have, be freer, like you're saying, being free, have more freedom to say, no, actually, I'm full now. I don't need any more. Without the guilt of if I say no, they're going to be offended because I'm not eating their cooking.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I know, yeah. I remember using this analogy before, speaking to a client about our stomachs. Like, imagine if you just bring your vision down into your stomach, and your stomach's looking up, just waiting for food to come in. It's like your stomach really doesn't mind if someone's offended, or it doesn't mind what's going on the outside. It's just going to receive the food you put in and do what it needs to do with it. So it's just trying to, I suppose, let go of any attachment you have, don't you, to things and what will people think. It's just thinking, I need to fuel my body. Yeah, in that kind of way. But yeah, I know it can be tricky, but it's just different things that can help. Yeah.
And in terms of the supporting on the other side, maybe looking at, because I'm always, when we say something like that to ourselves, right, today I'm going to tune into my body and I'm going to listen to where am I on the hunger scale. And if I am up at a 7 or 5, 6, 7, I can think, do I want that next helping, or do I want the sweet, or whatever?
Yeah.
And if we're then thinking, right, if I'm not hungry enough, I don't need it, I can actually say no. And sometimes there's a little thing goes off in the back of our heads going, oh, but I can't say no.
Yes.
Because XYZ.
Yes.
Or, all these different things. Anytime there's a little eek, but I can't. For me, it's like, let's take that out and have a look at it. What is that but? Because that but is telling us something about our beliefs. My belief is that I cannot say no to this person, in this example, because they'll be offended. Well, what does that say about my sense of self-worth, in that I'm putting a one-off meal where I've eaten everything else and enjoyed it and complimented it, and then I'm worried about, I'm saying no to the sweet, versus this is my body. My body's telling me, no, I've had enough.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. I love that about really kind of delving into the belief side, Robin. That's really, Yeah, that's really interesting because it's a little flag, isn't it? It's a bit like, yeah, and it's like I suppose seeing it as an opportunity as well to actually
Exactly.
delve in a bit, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's
Really.
part of that liberation, because I'm very much a believer that if we have attachments that you have mentioned a few times, attachments are things that are holding us stuck, basically. They are sticky attachments keeping us stuck.
Yeah.
And I went on some fantastic CPD training last year where the facilitator, the trainer was saying that that is the root cause of so many, if not all, of the issues that we face. We're attached somewhere in some way to something. And I think those buts highlight our attachments. And when we can deal with those, it is so liberating.
Yes. I love that. Gosh, isn't but a very powerful word if you think about it? Like whenever comes after but in your mind is like, that's it. That's a really clear, clear to think about. I like that. Yeah.
As long as we can do it with openness, curiosity, no labeling, no judgment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. And knowing, like, as we're talking about food, like it's certainly okay to, I mean, overindulge sometimes as well, and it's being kind to you in that process. You know, it's all part of that journey too. But I suppose then we could look, as we talked about triggers, if maybe that could be a trigger for some people as well. If you do happen to find yourself overindulging, that could be the trigger to continue. But it's just that, again, it's being mindful of, okay, that can happen, but we can let go and move on. Next.
It's about not beating ourselves up either way. If I have the sweet and I feel a bit full, hopefully not overly full, but a little bit like, whoo, maybe that was not necessary. That's fine. I did it one off. I can move on. It's not like you were talking about having to start the diet on the Monday, the idea of, oh, well, I ate a chocolate today, that's it. The diet's over.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, I mean, such a common thing, definitely. And, you know, as we see lots of diets is like that kind of quick fix approach, isn't it? So it's a really, okay, well, I'll just start on Monday. I can do, 4 or 5 weeks and it'll be fine. It's just that kind of quick fixes all around us, isn't it? So that can encourage the start on Monday approach as well, can't it? Yeah.
Versus the just let's change my lifestyle, let's change how I feel about myself, let's set myself free.
Yeah. And know that this doesn't need to be the way. There's definitely another way. There's people out there that are taking the actions at their natural way, and we can all be there, really. I think that's something I talked about as well with a client. Was we were talking about a weight. She had a target weight in mind, and she found it quite powerful. And we talked about waking up, imagining yourself at that weight, and say, for example, say if you woke up and imagined your natural weight, and then you just start taking action as a person at their natural weight or at that weight just for that day. Because then we talked about, so if I do that day, then I just need to let my weight catch up then, because you're going to need to take those actions at some point anyway. So it was just a bit of a change in mindset to just, pretend you're there already, start taking those actions, if you were there, and then everything else will fall into place. Yeah, so because that's the reality of it, isn't it? We're going to have to take those actions anyway, aren't we, at some point to get there? So that was quite a powerful little mindset shift as well. Yeah.
And you talked earlier about how the brain doesn't know the difference between up here and out there. Yeah. It's just another way of using visualization, isn't it? The way athletes do when they're training. It's just a workout for the brain. I'm just going to hold that energy. I'm going to be in that space in my head, and I'm going to see what that's like, and then I'm going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it will be changed, definitely. Yeah.
And you talk as well, one of the things that I read in your information was about how low-calorie diets aren't the answer. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yes. So low-calorie diets, again, speaking from experience on this cycle, there's so many, I suppose, ways that they're not really in tune with finding the natural weight and finding any sort of maintenance in weight as well. So I use an example of when I talk about low-calorie diets not working, I always speak of low calorie as in like very restrictive eating, which a lot of diets do encourage, reducing calories to 1,000. So I've seen some diets like 800 calories a day, and I'm just like, because you're not giving your body even the bare minimum to survive. Even if you were lying down on your bed, if you're having 500-600 calories a day, you're not really even fueling that, let alone anything else in your day. So we just need to make sure that if you are going on a calorie control diet, that you are meeting your basic needs, again, to keep your body functioning at its optimum. Because if it's not, then it's not going to want to lose weight or whatever it might be. That's going to be the last thing it's going to want to do. So so things that can happen on low calorie diets is metabolism can slow down. And this often is when people go on a restricted diet and then they go back to eating, say, normally, or however they were eating before the diet, and then they'll put the weight back on, and then maybe a little bit more as well. And that is the result of the often slower metabolism. So that's a very, that cycle then is very difficult to break, because then obviously you put more weight on. So it's like, I'll try another diet, and then metabolism's getting hit again, and this cycle continues. So I think that's a really, really important thing to understand before anyone might approach a really restricted diet in terms of long-term change and achievement, really. I think that's definitely the key thing. But again, what I was experiencing is that the lethargy, like if you are on a low calorie diet, I suppose people that have tried it, myself too, it can be very difficult to stick to when you're not actually feeling good on it, when you're feeling like, this isn't enjoyable. So it just, even from like a mindset side and approach to it, it's just very, very challenging, isn't it? So I'd say they're the main things I would pick out from why I really believe they're not the answer. Yeah.
And not only are they hard to stick to, but then once we aren't able to stick to them, there's the guilt and the beating ourselves up. I didn't stick to my diet.
I know, absolutely. And then if you think about what that's caused in the body, the stress levels once more, it's that cycle. Absolutely. Yeah. So
you were saying about restricted diets, and they're not enough even just to lie on your bed and do nothing. They're not enough to give you the energy for the breathing, the heart beating, all of these things that the body keeps on doing all day long, even if we're not up and moving around. But not only that, it doesn't give our digestive system enough to work on. And things like the intestines will actually slow down because there's nothing for them there to work on. That's why we need more fiber in our diet to bulk things out. But also, if we're not putting enough food in there, there's nothing for them to work on. And there's nothing for the stomach acid to, so it starts working on our stomach.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, definitely. And an interesting thing we do when we, with our clients is, when we do get our clients step on the scales, as a starting point, we do the basal metabolic rate. So you just get obviously the calories that your body would need at rest. And often this is, it's very personal, isn't it? But, it can be 1,500 calories for some people, 1,200 calories. So that's your body at rest. So if you think, as I mentioned earlier, so that's what your body needs, the 1,200 calories just to function. And if you're cutting to 1,800, then your body's like, okay, so I can't even, do what I need to do just to survive. Now what's going to happen? I'm going to have to start changing a few things. Lots of mechanisms are going to have to, non-essential things in the body will start to shut down. And it's just, it's not working with the body, is it? It's working completely against it. So, yeah.
And I was talking to somebody earlier today about how we charge our phones. So we put electricity into our phones, we put fuel into our cars. We're the same. We just need something to keep us going. And if we don't have it, it's going to be like the phone or the car. It's going to stop at some point. Or it's certainly going to say, this isn't working.
Sorry, I think I lost you there, Robin. We're back. Yeah, sorry. I think the connection went slightly there, but we're back.
Yeah, it's been coming and going for me as well. Just that we do need to keep topping up. If we don't keep topping up, like our phones or like our cars, the body's going to stop.
Oh, it will. It will. Yeah, definitely. It won't lie. It will definitely. It will tell you for sure. Yeah. No, really. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Anya, for coming on and sharing all of this, because I think it's such an important message. And that liberation, who doesn't want that sense of greater freedom?
Absolutely. Oh no, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you found it helpful, and obviously your listeners too. And yeah, I mean, I do. I just think if everyone could learn this and be free of that dieting mentality and that cycle, I think, yeah, very happy. Yeah.
So thank you everybody for listening. And if you're watching the replay, then just stick in #replay. And if you have any questions for Anya, then please do pop them in the comments below, and I'm sure that Anya will be able to reply. But Anya, other than that, where can people find you? And I know that you've got something special set up on your website now to help people, haven't you, even before they connect with you?
Yes, we do. So it's a brand new scorecard. So we've created a Find Your Natural Weight scorecard. So just by answering a couple of questions, you can find out how close you are to your natural weight, and you'll receive some of our top mindset, diet, lifestyle, and exercise tips as well, just to guide you in the right direction. And now you'll find that on our website. Yes, our website, sanavitahealth.co.uk, and social media, Instagram, Facebook, and also on LinkedIn as well. So we connect on any of those.
Fabulous, fantastic. So I hope that you've enjoyed our chat today, and feel free to share this group with anybody you know that you feel might find the information that we share here helpful. And tune in again next time when I'll be having another wonderful guest. Just keep an eye out in the group, and I'll be sharing more about that shortly. Bye for now.
Bye.